Hey, Diana, thank you for coming in. You just have such a marvelous background. You're definitely a compassionate, just amazing, outstanding global servant leader
Wow.
and doing so
Can I
much
talk to you
contribution.
every day? Can I talk to you every day? This is great. Like if you're keeping, just keep it going. Just keep it going.
But you have such an amazing background, and you contribute so heavily, and you got such a great history of contribution, and we're going to mine some of that conversation in our dialogue today. So thank you for coming in.
Well, heavens, thank you for having me. I I hope that your ears burn very often because I do talk to about you finely, very kindly. One of the occasions, the occasion I got to meet you, I always say that it's like karaoke in the car because it was like the conversation was so real. I was hoping to drive further. We should have driven all the way to Riyadh or something, because then we'd have had more conversation. But thank you too. And thank you for so much for always giving back to our Canadian and expat community here, as well as our Emirati community. When you come in to do some of our speaking engagements, you really do have a lot to offer. So it's obviously very much reciprocal. Okay.
So, Diana, as I mentioned, you got this great background and contribution. And, what were those three inflection points that made this wonderful person you are today? And it could have been, when you were 3 or 5 years old, it could have been inside, outside school. It could have
Mm.
been a mentor. It could have been challenges. So any sort of arcs in your journey that made this wonderful person you are and made you such a great contributor you are today.
Oh, wow. Well, I think I was thinking about them before, but let's say I'm actually probably going to change some of them because I know one for sure is definitely my upbringing from my parents because they immigrated to Canada from Poland. My father was Polish, my mother was German, and they always gave me the idea that I could do it, Louis. I could do anything. So that kind of upbringing, the fact that I could study anything, I could try anything once, it really made a huge difference. So I didn't ever really see any kind of walls or what they say glass ceilings because I thought, yeah, you could do it. Yeah, why not? And I must admit, even the mentors that I had in school too, we had a very creative type of university and a creative type of high school. We have a technical high school so that had hands-on as well as theory. So that was wonderful. I'm guess too moving to Europe. You moving back to Europe when I was went there for university and then all over the Orient for work and all over the Middle East as well. But I guess being with like-minded people kind of made a difference too. And I'm just really kind of fortunate. I've got a roof over my head. I'm healthy. Uh, so that kind of gave me the idea that it was so many times in my life that I could give back. Because when you meet some other people that you kind of know that they need a cheerleader because they don't see how wonderful they are. So sometimes it's a great feeling. It does really fill my well when I see other people succeed. So that's kind of, I guess, if that would be my energy. Oh. Does that answer some of your questions?
Well, we're going to go a little bit deeper. So you indicated that
Oh,
your parents immigrated into North America, right?
right,
And so you had an immigrant experience yourself, right? Early on.
right.
And so you had to learn the language. What was that like?
No, sort of, yes, because my parents, when they immigrated, they first moved to Quebec, but they thought maybe learning French and English together might be a little bit too much. At that time, they kind of thought, well, too many languages, my poor children, right? They didn't realize that we were quite the sponges that we were, right? And so the interesting part was then they moved over, they worked their way over to Ontario. They stayed in Toronto. So I was actually the firstborn Canadian of my family. So, but at home, we spoke German. So there were so many words I didn't know until I mean, I think even now, sometimes in English, every once in a while I go, I mean, the famous story I always say when I would go to a restaurant, I would ask, can I please have a knife, fork, and a spoon. Like instead of saying, "Could I have some cutlery?" Right? Because I only knew the language, what it was in English and German. So yeah, we were very lucky because we lived with so many other amazing immigrant families in Toronto. And so we didn't, as children, and even maybe even later on and a little bit later on in life, we saw that we had this multicultural society. And so that was fascinating. So I'd go over to my Korean little girlfriend's house and I learned something and she'd come over and my mother would teach her something in German or something like that. So the multicultural part kind of already made me, I guess, want to see parts of the world because, when you get around children and family, you're going, how interesting. I'd love to know about their culture. Yeah.
So, you indicated your parents, your family immigrated from Poland to initially Quebec, and then they moved into Ontario. But you were Canadian born, but you
Mhm.
spoke German at home, and when you went to school, then you had to kind of bridge that gap, because you were just fluent in German, and right. So that must have been a little bit of a cultural kind of a shift for you, because then you're speaking
Yeah.
fluent German, and then you have to integrate English, right?
Yeah, for sure. And then you know how I always imagine even our lovely immigrant families right now, where they're wishing so well for their children, and they want to help them study, but they can't help them study in the country language that they go into. So I realize that now. That it must have been difficult. I never even thought of it. It must have been really difficult for my parents because they were exceptional scholars, both of them. So, and my father always would come home like I'd have a science project and I get like 98%. And jokingly, he would say to me, "What happened to the other 2%?" Right? So, well, I left it at school, Daddy. There you go. But yeah, it was. But again, I had support. I had support. My sister, who was older, so she would help. She would probably be my study mate. And I was kind of a kind of a nerdy bookworm, I guess, if there's such a thing, And yeah, the languages can make walls. But I mean, I think if we leave the curiosity, especially in children, they don't see it as much. So maybe that's where my parents did such an amazing job, or maybe they were just extremely busy too with their lives. But they did such an amazing job that just kept me curious. So I didn't really see the walls happening there.
Now, you said your parents were scholars, so that means that you grew up in a kind of a curious, enriched environment. And so when you went to school, were you interested in a variety of subjects, or were you leaning more to the arts or more to the sciences, or really just everything? Were you kind of like a generalist, or any niche areas that you really sort of piqued your interest?
Yeah. Well, I was thinking about when I had our conversation when you were saying that your family was kind enough to get different types of encyclopedias, right? So I remember the joy of my parents being able to buy us encyclopedias too at the same time. So, having your own library at home, I mean, oh my goodness, it was probably like having the internet now or a ChatGPT 5 or a Claude or something like that. If it was just so exciting because your projects would be even more enhanced. Um, yeah, I really liked art. I've always liked art. I mean, so studied art all the time. Love colored, love drawings. In fact, I have a degree in art from Ocad University, and I like business too because my parents were both in business. So I kind of wanted, how you sometimes like to also appease your parents, or you want to kind of, make you want to be seen as they're proud of me or something. So, and I was just really lucky. It was always lucky in the maths. So we always had when we went to high school, they had level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4. They had to put a level 5 for about three of us in high school because we just somehow numbers just kind of came easy. So I guess I am a generalist. I do have a passion for the arts. I do like figuring out things, like taking them apart too. Like even as a kid, my dad would give me a broken alarm clock, and I wanted to see how it worked inside. Yeah, I guess a generalist is a good way of describing it.
So that's really interesting. You were really curious. You definitely had this tendency for art. You ended up studying art in college, right? So, and yet you had a affinity for math, and you like tinkering and putting, taking things apart and things like that. So you have this artistic math kind of interest, a business as well, because your parents are in business, and you graduated from college. So, what was the first kind of series of jobs you went through?
Oh, well, uh, I've as a kid, I always had a part-time job because I kind of like the idea of seeing my bank account grow nickel by nickel, dime by dime, dollar by dollar. I like the uh, being self-reliant so that I could afford to buy my own Christmas gifts for my family by myself, and those kind of things. But I think what was exciting or even through university had jobs because I took a student loan at that time to go to university. It was the norm of it. It had jobs to pay that off. My parents helped me too, obviously, as well, for because we were living away from home. And but when I soon before I graduated, I applied for a job right away because I'm thinking I need to get a job. I need to pay off my student loan. And then I found one in the field of import export, and it was in textile design, which was one of my backgrounds. So I was a merchandiser for the longest time. That was the lovely part, was that allowed me to travel all over the Orient and Europe and everywhere. So that was my first real paying job, let's say, employment. But before that, every summer, my parents would allow me to go travel the world, mostly Europe, because we had family there in Germany, and I would do internships. So every occasion I could do an internship to find out what really business is like. I took that on because, the creative part is lovely. But if maybe for a business, if you can't put a really ROI or some kind of structure behind it, it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough. So that was my first. And then I continued as a buyer merchandiser for years, and worked for different companies in Canada, and enjoyed that field very much. And then I moved to Italy. That was about it.
So that's really, really kind of fascinating. Then you combine your kind of artistic sort of fashion sense and things like that as a merchandiser, and you're also have this great opportunity to work with other cultures and things like that, which is because you used to do internships around the world as well. And then you mentioned even in school, you would have friends from different sort of ethnic backgrounds, right? So very multicultural. And then you end up spending many years in there, and you end up in Italy. So what happened in Italy, and then how did you get into the Middle East?
It's a good thing I like you because I'm going to answer all these questions. Okay. So I was just thinking one other thing too. What I was curious too, because when going in university in Canada, you know how you pay your tuition and you're allowed to have an X number of courses and the X number whatever. So I remember I filled up the courses with subjects even that I wasn't 100% sure the direction that I would be going. So I actually did coding for a while, and any type of the first types of computer programming. So I'm really happy I did that because it makes you even more curious. So when I went to Italy, I started teaching computer to kids there as English as a second language. So it was fascinating. I'm sure the children taught me more than I taught them about computers, but I did. It was really fascinating. So I ended up moving to Italy because I met my husband. He's a reconstructive plastic surgeon for the Cancer Institute in Italy, and it was who could change jobs, right? So as a Canadian, or maybe because I still thought you could do it, Louis, I decided, oh, I'm European background. But it should be a piece of cake moving to Italy, right? It should just be no problem. Little did I know, it did have quite the learning curve, okay, because different work cultures, different business cultures. A lot of the cultures were, thank goodness, my European background did help, I did take one university course for Italian, because I had lived with a landlady who spoke no English, and I wanted to say, the house is on fire, I'm leaving, or something, at least, to those terms. And there, what happened, I ended up with a great community of Canadians. And that time it was called the Canadian Women, CWARs, Canadian Women's Association of Rome at that time, because it wasn't CCR, which is the Canadian Club of Rome, which they've changed to affiliate to make sure that gentlemen were kindly along. And I took part of all the associations that I could to have like-minded people. And then I ended up being actually the president of the Canadian Club of Rome at that time for so many years. And it made me realize how lucky we are in Canada for our children, for the growth of things, meeting other great Canadians all over the world. It was a really great experience. I actually lived there for 30 years. So daughters are growing up there, but they're back in Toronto. They're back in Toronto.
So, you have this background where, you've got German and you learn English, and then you end up traveling the world. So you're picking up different smatterings of different kind of languages. You're in Italy, so you speak Italian.
Yeah. Well,
And
you should ask my husband, Stefano. He has the same name as you. That's still up for grabs. He says, "Are you sure you're speaking Italian?" I said, "I'm positive. I'm just making up the words as I go along, but I'm positive."
and you taught coding as well, because you have this math interest when you were very, very young, and of course coding has a mathematical kind of or logic structure to it. So
Logical anyway.
yeah, and then there's this empathetic kind of social networking side of you, right? At the EQ side. And that's why you get involved with the associations. You end up being the president of the Canadian Club of Rome. And so I can see, you got this merchandising background, buyer, sharpening your business interests, global market insight, particularly in Europe, Middle East, and Asia. And so you could see all of these kind of different pieces weaving together, because you come from a sort of a multicultural background, in essence, right?
Right.
Your school, and then also because of your immigrant sort of history, and because you travel so much as an intern. So I could see all the pieces tied together, because when you're a head of an association, you have to manage different kinds of perspectives. You have to have insights and synergy with different kinds of perspectives. Okay, so then you end up, after all these years in Europe and then in Italy, you end up then in the Middle East, the Gulf Cooperation Council states. So how did that move come about, and how you got into your current role?
Wow. Yeah, that's why you never know. Like, you never know in life, right? Which is absolutely fascinating. We had come here for a few trips because my husband had done some teaching for universities on the reconstructive and plastic surgery for mostly breast cancer, types of cancer, microsurgery. So I'd come along as trips, and I thought, "Whoa, what a lovely place. It's so organized. It's so, clean. It's so safe." Those the typical things one says when they come to Dubai, right? And because, coming from chaotic Rome, it was kind of, it's the best of both worlds. You got the chaotic, kind of flexible, let's have a cappuccino and coffee, and then let's, be a little bit more structured here and I call it in the sandbox, right? So I was still the president of the Canadian Club of Rome, and my ambassador there, Alexa, she'd asked me kindly to go. "Oh, you're going to Dubai? Go visit my counterpart, Marcy Grossman, here." And I was going to visit anyway because we had some other team players from the consulate, and I've been friends for the longest time. So I wanted to say, if there's a collaboration, if there's something I can help with. I walked into the office, and there was one of my friends was there, and then Marcy turns around. She goes, "Excuse me, you're not leaving." I go, "Excuse me?" She goes, "We need an executive director here for the Canadian Business Council." And I'd already figured I'd given at the office, as they say. And then I thought about it. And then I thought again, because I was supposed to be the jolly joker, as I call it, going from Italy, Dubai, Canada, see the kids, whatever I needed to do in Europe. But then when I came here, I realized that Dubai is such a lovely place where literally it can be my give back time, give back to other people, because I don't have any hidden agendas. I don't need anything, thank goodness, from anyone. Like I said, healthy, happy, kids healthy, happy, husband's healthy, happy, food on our plate. We're in a safe place. So I thought, you know what? They're absolutely right. What could if not, what would I be doing here? All right. It would be a shame to not be able to apply this energy. So I promised that I would leave it healthier than I found it. And that's what I'm doing. I sort of like the Girl Guide, Girl Scout kind of motto. I'm going to leave the place better than I found it. And so, which I did. So I started with all the back ends, cleaned up all the back end, got them new websites, got them all the technology, got them all the automations, because gosh, I love automations. Sorry, I mean, it's really helpful for, business councils. And so I actually said no twice. The third time, as they say, is the lucky one. I thought, I'm silly. Someone's offering you this great opportunity. And I thought, it's a shame not to say yes. And I'm so happy I did, because I meet the most amazing people, the most amazing businesses, the most amazing interns and students. So I'm really super, super lucky. I'm honest to goodness, super lucky. I don't want to sound like a Hallmark card, but I am very lucky.
So now you're the executive director for the Canadian Business Council of Dubai and the Northern Emirates, which is really plays a vital role, and it's multicultural role as well, right? Because you're integrating the interests of Canada and other parts of the world together with the Middle East as well, right? And the Gulf states, and particularly UAE, which is quite a prominent Gulf state, right, in terms of innovation and funding capability. And as you mentioned, it's very, very safe. So you really play a vital role in advancing Canadian business interests across the Gulf region. So can you talk about what that entails, like on a kind of week-to-week basis? Are you're holding events, or how does that occur?
Oh, heavens. We are a little bit too busy for my liking. But, we have so many different sectors. We have so many different delegations that come in. So we try to find a way to appease many in the right quantities. I mean, last year we had 84 initiatives in the year. Okay, about 53 we run, and maybe we'll be co-hosting with the other portion. As for example, like everywhere in the world right now, I mean, September, October is silly crazy, just silly crazy. It's like off the wall, like steroids or whatever you want. We have our annual gala that we do, which is more like the signature UAE Canadian event that we have here with dignitaries and Canadian community. Tons of Canadian businesses coming in, because of GITEX. So it's around the same timing. It's on October the 11th. Many great initiatives, like some of them you've been taking part of, like lunchtime conversation, breakfast conversations, where I try often, even for people like yourself that are coming in for a conference, there might be a lot of Canadians on the panels, but different panels. And I really want you, while you're here, you might as well meet each other, because it's always nice. And then we get some great take-home messages from that. We have webinars, we have podcasts, we have blogs. We try as much to be the cheerleaders and give exposure even to new startups and companies coming in, because it might just be that one extra person they'll connect with. We're under the Dubai Chamber, and we're so lucky. The Dubai Chamber is got the only international office in North America right now is in Toronto. So I went to meet Thomas Radu from our Toronto office there. So it's just nice to see that the connections are really close. We get lots of guidance and help from the delegations. and also from our consulate and embassy. So we really have a really lovely group of people. That's what they are, just a great, amazing group of people with interesting backgrounds. And I would say maybe 97%, 95% don't have hidden agendas. And they're often, let's say, key players like yourself who are willing to give us some time to maybe some new entry people that could use your guidance, which is great. So I live vicariously through all of you, every one of you. You fill my well.
Well, it's really interesting because I participated in a couple of your events, right? And what a mix of just tremendous people and insights and a variety of backgrounds and a lot of capability. But you are the hub of that for sure, right?
I'm just getting the kittens in a basket. It's not as easy as it looks, but I'm getting them in a basket. That's good. But thank you. That was very kind of you to say. And I appreciate it because some days I'm thinking, what the heck am I doing? But then but what the nice part is that it kind of excites me that maybe way after, where a long, long time after I'm gone, that maybe one of those connections has created a ripple effect for something positive. I mean, really, again, not to be a Hallmark card, isn't that the biggest thrill, right? So
Yeah, and it's really interesting. It really sort of fits your DNA and your experiences, right? Which is multicultural, many languages, your business background, your merchandising background, because there you're in buying, so you're in the sort of the sales aspect as well, and then the but also as a buyer, really looking at a variety of different kinds of things and being able to judge and so you're combining those business kind of instincts that you built.
Interesting.
Marketing, right?
Never thought of that. Yeah. You see, that's why I always tell the students, we have our interns, study something, like study. Or if an opportunity pops up, it may not be your forever profession, but I'm sure if there'll be something they're going to pick out of it that they'll use later on in life. I mean, really enjoy it. There's so much variety out there. They should be proud of everything they do. That's it.
Yeah, and then you have this tech interest that you had very early because you're taking things apart and you're teaching coding and you have this math interest. So, and a lot of business interests have some tech aspect to it, right? Or science aspect. And because you worked particularly in Europe, Middle East, and Africa when you were a merchandiser, then you're bringing all of those backgrounds together with your family experience, your educational experience, and you're bringing all of that leadership into empowering the international community and building bridges between Canada and the international community. And you're doing the mentorship in essence, because you really, when you host these events, you're basically helping you're acting as a mentor to power these kind of engagements and meaningful partnerships and cultivating them across the sector. So I can see all of these aspects of your background coming together. Not to mention your husband is a doctor, right? So that's a science background and healthcare background.
That's it. We're getting it from every which angle, as they say. Yeah, but again, this is because when you are fortunate enough to have a healthy, supportive family, health and all those other things, some of these things come a little easier, so that's why we want, even with our students, or that's even some of our members. We do have some members that they're just starting out, and so we try to do some pro bono memberships or things like that too, because we know every once in a while someone could use an extra helping hand. Remember too when one of your teachers in university or something, they kind of sort of sparked you on a direction because you might have not thought of it. So this is what we're trying to do when we're listening to people's ideas, because we are already thinking, oh, he should meet, Samuel from so-and-so, or wouldn't this person from the RTA be perfect, or Gowling or Free the Angel, or at all our wonderful companies here. So we're really lucky. We do have a great network of people. So that's why bridging Canada to the UAE is almost easy, if you want to say.
So what are your plans then? I mean, what are your aspirations for the CBC, the Canadian Business Council? And well, how would you like it to evolve over the next 5 years?
Oh, that's cool. Um, well, I really want to see that our members and stakeholders have real value from the connections and networking that they make. That's the bottom line. Uh, if there's real value, it's easy enough to continue the growth of the internal part of our office, let's say with let's say getting event chair people or other people to be in our office so that we can actually give more value again to members and stakeholders and new members and friends. Um, I like the fact that we have grown a lot with our internship program, which that's what our gala is going to be about. It's always about funding the internship program because it's awfully lovely to get dressed up and have a lovely meal with friends, but I always like that has a little bit of something exciting for our interns. In fact, some of our interns are actually there. They're volunteering at the event. I'd like to see more up and coming, younger and young at heart, younger and young at heart, people taking part of our programs. I think that's about it. Yeah. More interns. We're very lucky that we're the only business council out of I think we're over 52 business councils in Dubai that we have been picked for the WEP program. WEP is a work emerization program. It was a pilot program before that we took part with. And this is absolutely fantastic because we get young Emirati women that come to our office. They do internships for about 8 weeks. And, they come in a little shy at the beginning because they're young teenagers. And then, then along the way, they tell me great things like maybe that we've already taken for granted, like, Miss Diana, I would like to be, thank goodness they're called me Miss and not ma'am. Miss Diana, I like that. Keeps that real. Miss Diana, I want to be the first Emirati firefighter woman. I thought, oh, how, and I said, that's great. That's fantastic. So we might find a firefighter to talk to her or we'll get somebody to talk to her about building her LinkedIn or a energy company maybe that has to do with fire extinguishers or even in some cases, the burns, like say my husband would come in and talk to them about what they'd have to do for burns. So just to give them a little bit varied thing. So I'd like to see even more women on the boards here. We're getting there, but I'd like to see more and more women here in our business councils. Okay. That's my 5-year plan.
So for a lot of people around the world who will see the interview here, they're not familiar with the UAE and they're not familiar with Dubai or Abu Dhabi. And maybe you can sort of paint a picture what sort of the environment is like and things like that. And you can talk about it from a cultural standpoint, from a business standpoint, from an innovation standpoint. What is that experience like? Because you've lived there now for a number of years. So
yeah, I mean, it's been 6.5 years. We were here during COVID too, which was very well run, by the way. Just as if anyone, first of all, okay, we all know it's hot. Okay, that's hot. It is hot. Okay, but it's like when people talk about Toronto or somewhere that is chilly in Canada. Oh, it's cold. Yeah. Well, we have our infrastructures that work so that when it's hot, you're working in air conditioning in places. The subway has air conditioning, bus stops have air conditioning. So let's just put it this way. And most things run on time. So there is a lot of traffic. It is a very safe place for families, for children, for people in general to grow up in. It is not, everybody thinks, oh, I found Dubai. It's the yellow brick road, the Wizard of Oz. Like all places in the world, we're not the only game in town. So you're going to come here. You might need to really work to that, I don't know, pay for your home pay for your car, pay for the other types of things. It's like everyone, everywhere in the world. You have a great community of Canadians. I think in Dubai alone, I think we're over 60,000 Canadians with great alumni groups. So there's even many more that who have studied in Canada. You know how that happens. You meet someone in another side of the world and they find out you're Canadian and you do that little Canadian hop and you go, you're Canadian. And then heavens, if they're from the same city, they want to know if you went to the same university. It's like, it's silly, but we have a lovely community so when you're coming into, there's a community for moms, community for families. I'd recommend that because the traffic is extremely important right now, to keep your travel time as much as you can down by keeping if you have families, your children, schools closer to where your home is. Um, Networking is so important here. It is extremely important here. I'm sure it's important all over the world, but networking is extremely important. There's so many networking events you could probably go to 6 or 7 a week if you had such the time. Culturally, I think it's like everywhere. I think we had something called, well, we just still did in Rome. We had something called Welcome Neighbor. It was a lovely woman, Yolanda Bernardini, and still she's in the States now. And she started a Welcome Neighbor, and she did something. And she's basically always said, "Grow where you're planted," you know. So when you're in a place, respect their culture, and you can integrate your culture with that as well. Um, that could be in modest dressing, especially in times of Ramadan. It's just good taste, let's be honest, okay? Um, there's so many wonderful parts of the UAE that you can have for your families. There's things to do for families all the way around. Like everywhere, it could get expensive, but I think it's not like if you went out for brunch every 3 days or something, then that might get expensive. You just have to keep things realistic. Um, Business-wise, there's tons of growth. They're creating tons of opportunities with the different types of visas, which are really important so that maybe startups might want to do more here. We find a lot of startups are coming in. There's different types of licenses and depending if it's free zone or not free zone. But you have people that can actually support you with that because things change so rapidly. I think it's a great stage in one's life. And like a lot of places, you don't know how long you're going to be there. But if your company and your family's growing and you're safe, a lot of people do a lot of traveling from here. They live here in Dubai and they work in Saudi or they work in Oman or some even work in Europe. But UAE is growing. It is growing.
Yeah, I mean, as you mentioned, there's free trade zones. There's particular kind of great tax structures for people who want to invest in the UAE or set up some kind of a shop or branch office or headquarters in UAE. Like you said, a startup, if they're interested in having a really good environment, then UAE is a great place to be. What's the difference between Dubai and Abu Dhabi?
I always say the kilometers, but there is a bit of difference. That's another thing too, because it's about an hour drive, which wouldn't be very much by Canadian standards, and sometimes maybe because of the traffic, it could be a little bit more. But if you've ever been on the GTA in Toronto, you'll know that that's nothing. You could go like a kilometer, and it's an hour drive. Um, the difference is because for work-wise, they're different sectors. So oil and gas might be in Abu Dhabi, lots of tourism in Dubai, but both have financial hubs, both have AI hubs, both we have both have even sustainability and energy. The quality of life for if you'd like a more relaxed pace. Abu Dhabi is fantastic. Dubai is still a little bit more like, they look at it as the city that moves a little faster. but they're both absolutely wonderful. We at one point when we first came years ago, we wanted to go to Abu Dhabi, but we ended up here because Stefano was at the hospital here for distance wise. Um, Again, it's an hour and a half. We have our consulate here in Dubai and our embassy in Abu Dhabi, so they work together. So a lot of the trade officers are for energy are there. Yeah, those are the major differences. Oh, okay. So Dubai is Abu Dhabi is dry, mostly served from the hotel. Dry would mean no alcohol being served, and the UAE has more alcohol places like for restaurants where you can get a glass of wine. Let's say if there's a difference as well. Speed limits are different. the, but they're really both different quality of life. They say at the moment the cost of living is a little bit less in obviously outside of Dubai. So Abu Dhabi, Sharjah, Ajman, Ras Al Khaimah, those are all. So we've got Canadians and all lovely expats in all of these areas. So it just depends where you're working, I guess. So if you have the luxury, let's say, of working online or remotely, you could probably go anywhere just to get the feeling of things, right? So that would be it. Yeah.
I guess for people who are interested in doing business in Dubai and in the region, how do they get in touch with the CBC? I mean, if they want to work and become a member and integrate, like you said, you run over 80 different programs of some sort, and that's a lot. So, but
I
that means,
know. I
yeah,
try to cut down.
but those are all value, right? So that, those are, how
That's what
do
we're
they
hoping.
engage with your organization, and how do they become members, and what's the onboarding process?
Ah, well, first of all, I try as much as humanly possible. First, like through LinkedIn, I reach out to a lot of people, or I get, DMs on LinkedIn, and then take the conversation maybe to an email, so that way I can give them my link. So I'll give them a virtual meeting for about a half hour, so that at least if they can ask their questions. We really want to spend as much time humanly as I can to help them. Obviously, they can see our website, which is, the CBC in Dubai and com. You can see it on the website, and it talks about membership and sponsorship and all those lovely things. Our onboarding process is usually having initial calls to help, because we want to find out what these wonderful people are looking for and how we may help them. Or likewise, sometimes there are people that are wishing to help the community as well, or they're just starting up here. We have amazing groups called Connect groups. So we've got Connect Business-Minded Women, Connect AI, Connect Technology, Connect Legal Professionals, Connect Healthcare Professionals, and so on and so forth. And so what happens if there's initial email, I might say, great, why don't you have a chat with, if you're in AI, why don't you have a chat with Chris Doral, which or one of our heads of those groups, because they're, like-minded discussions, and then take that forward. We don't push membership. We just really want you to be part of a community who cares. That's basically what we are. And then that force too, between all the newsletters and all the LinkedIn and all our events, we make sure that when that person is at those physical events, literally dragging them over to the other person that they can meet, because sometimes they're even too shy at the beginning, or they're being very proper or something. So we just want them to have a community that can be of help, because there might have been someone else who just did that business license, just did it like 5 minutes ago, and he's got some tips and tricks that you could never find online if your life depended on it. So they're really super helpful. There's chat groups as well, which they can talk to each other if they really want to, and it's really the human touch. It is. We spend a lot of time, as much as we can, also because people are interesting. You really meet some really great people, so it's a great way to to onboard them. And then we give them time. Like we also have things called Faces of the CBC. So we ask our members to actually give a little short video about themselves, and we put them out on our YouTube channels and other things just to keep them involved, and we actually have a lot more following now. I actually put myself out more on LinkedIn than I usually would have liked to. I kind of be fond of my pajama and my book, but in bed and reading. But I realized if I have to be, if I want to be, which I want to be, the face of the Canadian Business Council here in Dubai, I put my face out so that when people will get more interaction. That's it.
No, I mean, it's an amazing journey, and I can see why you have this guiding philosophy of like these hashtags, like people first, we mean business, network forward.
Oh, you follow me. I like that. Okay, good.
And then you're attending these conferences and things like that because you're always scouting as well. I mean, that's how we met, right?
I'm stalking. I'm not scouting. I'm stalking. Okay. Well, it's like when I had the pleasure of meeting you. I literally went to the website for the conference and tried to find anything that looked up a lot of people who might have not even had a Canadian company for some reason, that I would find out their background was Canadian. So it's almost like a little treasure hunt when you find these people, They're like, look what I found, look what I found.
How about Diana? You're the treasure, and you got this really great human-centered leadership style. You definitely have social responsibility. Just for the audience, you've been involved with the Terry Fox run, breast cancer awareness campaigns, food drives for the homeless. You've done youth empowerment. You worked with the Girl Guides, the Girl Scouts in your past, supporting young women in leadership. And then that mentorship and capability of integration and synthesis and empowerment is occurring in the region as well now with the Canadian Business Council. So this is the last question, because you've given us your journey, right? From the beginning. I could see all the different
I'm ready. I'm sitting up straighter for the last question. Go.
Okay, so what recommendations would you like to leave the audience and/or questions you want to leave the audience?
Oh, well, I'm going to give you a compliment. Okay. So this is what I'd like to say to the audience. Why I am extremely fond of speaking with you or talking kindly and fondly about you is because you make people seen and heard. Okay. And I don't realize, I don't think many people, or maybe they do, what extremely talented gentleman you are. And so the fact that of your caliber of gentleman, that you would make anyone in the room feel of that caliber. So making people seen and heard is a gift. You just make people feel comfortable. So I would like people to take that into consideration. You never know who you have in front of you. And it might be the shyest little bug, and all of a sudden they just felt like oh my goodness, this person saw me. They made me feel great. And I think the other thing is, please stay curious. Stay curious. Some things can scare you a little. I always see people when they're taking maybe their first, let's say, technology, or coming to eating new foods, coming to a new city. Stay curious and don't take yourself so seriously. I am a Capricorn, just in case you wanted to know. Okay, I am a Capricorn, and they always say with experience. So I'll just say with experience, we tend to get more youthful in our spirit. Okay, so I wish everyone to become more youthful in their spirit, because there's so much great stuff out there that I guess that's it. I think that's it.
So, Diana, thank you for sharing so much and all of the great capabilities. And you're definitely a magnet and a talent, and you're so thoughtful, and you're a very accomplished business leader, definitely a community connector. You're a passionate advocate for the Canadian UA collaboration. And again, thank you for coming in and sharing so many different and great insights with our audience.
Well, thank you for getting up so early to be able to do this call together, because it was a gift for me. And actually, thank you. You actually filled my well today, because the retrospect is like every once in a while you forget, yeah, Batman, I'm pretty dang good. So I appreciate it too, because that energy will help me network it forward. Okay.
Well, Diana, you're definitely tremendously talented and wonderful, and a great servant leader for the world, and a great contributor as well. So
Oh,
again,
thank you.
thank you, and peace be with you, and I really
Likewise.
appreciate you coming in.
Okay. Thank you so much. You have a lovely evening or day. Okay.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.